Trudeau's Liberals glossing over problems with a UN group that has terror ties. I'm Brian Lilly with the Rebel.media. I've been telling you for well over a year now about the Trudeau government's flirtation with funding a UN body that has close connections with terrorist groups, that has employees that glorify terrorism, that educates children to hate Jews in Israel. I'm speaking, of course, of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. Canada has started funding UNRWA again recently, this despite some grave concerns. And the latest documents I've obtained through access to information show a government desperate to cover this up, desperate to gloss over the concerns and to rush the money out the door before Canadians ever knew what was happening. Check out this email. It calls for a strict omerta on the money going out. That strict omerta, that's the mafia code of silence. And the email also asks, well, could the payments to UNRWA go out on the 7th? That would be November 7th of 2016. The announcement wasn't made until November 15th, a week later, but the money's already out the door? Oh, and the plan for rolling this out also included giving a heads up to the NDP and Green leader Elizabeth May, but not the official opposition, the Conservatives, because they opposed the move. Why the rush and why the secrecy? Because the Liberals knew this would be controversial. They knew there would be problems with UNRWA. Whatever good cause the organization started with back in the 1940s, it's become an organization that has far too much rot in it. From staff unions controlled by the likes of Hamas, a banned terror group in Canada, to the hiding of Hamas arms caches in UN facilities during the 2014 rocket attack, reign of terror in Israel. Canada had long been a funder of UNRWA, but after much of this information came to light a few years ago, after one too many incidents of school books used by UNRWA inciting hatred, Canada, under Stephen Harper, pulled its funding. But the Liberals, they never liked that move. It's not like Canada stopped giving humanitarian aid to the Palestinians. It just didn't give the money to UNRWA because there were concerns it was being diverted to groups like Hamas to support terrorism. But even as the Liberals prepared to reinstate funding, they acknowledged that money being diverted to terrorism was a possibility. Throughout this document, there's talk of increased due diligence on this issue. And a chart meant to deal with controversial issues? Well, this is part of the answer given on could money end up in the wrong hands? Quote, as with all Canadian assistance to the West Bank and Gaza, Canada exercises enhanced due diligence on funding for UNRWA. This includes ongoing oversight, regular site visits, a systemic screening process, and strong anti-terrorism provisions in funding arrangements. The document also says in its talking points, Canada is working with UNRWA to include further monitoring, neutrality, accountability, and reporting requirements to assure compliance with Canada's expectations. Now, when you have to include extra vigorous oversight and demand neutrality, maybe there's a problem. Maybe you should send your aid dollars to another group that doesn't have these sorts of problems. But this is about more than aid, more than helping Palestinians. This is about Justin Trudeau and the Liberals sucking up to the UN so that they can win the Security Council seat at the next vote. Now, as for neutrality, why does that keep being mentioned? Why is that an issue? Well, because as UN Watch, a NGO, has documented extensively in its report, many of the teachers and administrators at UNRWA, at least according to their social media profiles, love Adolf Hitler, hate Jews. They celebrate killings, stabbings, bombings, and generally back terrorist groups. I mean, just scroll through the table of contents, click through if you want. UN Watch also made a video documenting some of this so that lawmakers could see for themselves before they made the decision to give money to UNRWA again.
When you ask what have the Germans done to the Jews, you must always ask what have done the Jews to the Germans. We must make something negative, 6 million corpses. And so came this fantastic number of 6 million, which is in every newspaper, in everything.
Despite that, they still did it. They still gave the money. Don't worry, though. The government of Canada, under Justin Trudeau, is making sure that we train them to be neutral on social media, or to put it another way, hide their support for terrorism. Check out this email from Jacqueline Thorette, an executive at Global Affairs, providing some communication lines on this issue. She says, as with all Canadian assistance to the region, there will be enhanced due diligence applied to the UNRWA funding. This includes ongoing oversight, regular visits, we've heard this before, but also this, Canada will also provide part of its funding to train staff on proper use of social media. All right, let's look at one of the teachers profiled by UN Watch in their report. They wrote about Nawar Noor Nawar, who identifies herself as an UNRWA teacher on her Facebook profile. Published the post below, which is a close-up of several machine guns. It's accompanied by the text, "We are the resistance." Well, that's interesting because I looked up her Facebook timeline recently and quickly found this from just a few weeks ago, a posting mourning the death of Mohammed Kota, the chief bomb maker for Hamas, who died in an accident recently, as in he blew himself up. But there is Nawara Noor Nawara mourning the man that made so many bombs to kill so many innocent people. She just posted this back in February. UNRWA teachers still supporting terror. Canada now supporting terror. I'm not arguing against humanitarian aid. I'm arguing against supporting a group that far too often has shown they have dangerous connections to terrorist groups while also inciting death to the Jews in Israel. Is that what we stand for? It's not the Canada that I stand for. Canada can do much good in the world, but we're not going to accomplish much by giving money to groups like UNRWA.